Okay, good evening, class. So I hope that you were able to answer the public ad exam well. I have yet to check it, but I'm sure you did well. Okay, for tonight, I will just shoot a lecture video for Philippine Executive because I think that ang akong focus sa lecture is more on public ad because I will maglisod jud kog apas honestly class maglisod jud kog apas sa time, especially nga mahuman ko work 5, and my office will close mga 5:30, so I don't have time but to kanang muhawa gyud ko dayon class ba, so I don't have time to lecture nya di ko kauli sa kanang sa balay ba nga I have a private room. I'm living separately naman good. Anyways. Okay. So for tonight's lecture, mag-recap lang ko sa Philippine Executive, okay? So for the previous lecture or kanang online class, we first defined political law, right? And just briefly, it is the branch of public law that deals with the organization and operation of the governmental organs of the state and defines its relations with the inhabitants of the territory. Okay, and what is the scope of political law? We have political law, constitutional law, administrative law, law on municipal corporations, law on public officers, election laws, and public international law. And to which does Philippine Executive, the subject, belong to? It belongs to constitutional law. And the brief constitutional history, so we went over that sa katong history sa katong different old versions of the Constitution. So I hope you are able to have a sort of a timeline class and what happened to each version of the Constitution. But most especially, take note of the effectivity of the 1987 Constitution, which is the Constitution that is operational now, and that is February 2, 1987. It is the date of the plebiscite when the people ratified the Constitution. And again, how did we define the Constitution? It is the written instrument enacted by direct action of the people by which fundamental powers of the government are established, limited, and defined, and by which those powers are distributed among the several departments for their safe and useful exercise for the body politic. So I think this definition by Malcolm is the most accurate and the most illustrative of what really is the purpose of a constitution. No, number one, it is which the fundamental powers of the government are established. So, establish niya ang powers of the government. Two, it is also where the powers of the government is limited and defined. So again, we go back to the Constitution, and by which those powers are distributed among the several departments for their safe and useful exercise. So I suggest that you memorize this definition. So I'm shooting this at 9 p.m. I have na my coffee, my water, my snacks. So, okay kay ko class. Mag-condition kay ko for tonight. Kailangan ko mabawi ninyo, no? Ako lang ni iputol-putol nga video. Anyways, okay. So, what is the classification of Constitution? First classification, we have written and unwritten. Second, enacted, conventional, and evolved or cumulative. 3, rigid or flexible. So, we already defined each classification. And again, the Philippine Constitution is written, enacted, and rigid. Written, enacted, and rigid. And what are the qualities of a good written constitution? It must be broad, brief, and definite. Broad, it must be comprehensive enough to provide every contingency. Brief, it must confine itself to basic principles to be implemented with legislative details, more adjustable to change and easier to amend. 3. Definite, to prevent ambiguity in its provision, so it must be clear. Okay, let's go to the doctrine, to the important doctrine, which is the doctrine of supremacy of the Constitution. This is very basic and this is very important. It is good that you will master this doctrine as early as now. You're in your early years of study. No? Okay, so what does this doctrine tell us? The Constitution is the basic and paramount law to which all other laws must conform and to which all persons, including the highest officials of the land, must defer. Okay, that number 1. Take note of that. The Constitution is basic and paramount law. When we say paramount, it is the highest peak. No? Where can we see the word paramount? I think it's in the Paramount Studios, kanang sa movies class. And ang ilang logo is Mount Everest, diba? The highest peak. Okay? This basic and paramount law, to which all other laws must conform. What do you mean by conform? It must not be violative. For simpler term, conform means it must not violate. Okay? The laws must not violate the Constitution. That's as simple as it gets. And to which all persons, including the highest officials of the land, must defer. What do you mean by defer? Must bow down or must respect. Okay? And number 2, another point is no act shall be valid, however noble its intentions, if it conflicts with the Constitution. Okay? No act shall be valid, even if the intentions are good, but if it violates the Constitution, then that act is invalid. The Constitution must ever remain supreme. All must bow down to the mandate of this law. So what is the rule? If a law or a contract violates the Constitution, that law or contract, whether promulgated by the legislative or the executive branch of the government, or entered into by private persons for private purposes, is null and void and without any force and effect. So take note, what is the effect if a law or a contract violates the Constitution? Take note of this word. It is null and void and without any force and effect. Null, what do you mean by null? Null. It is as if wala siya ning exist in the first place. It is null and it is void. It is invalid, okay? Void. Or to erase or to cancel. That's what it means. And without any force and effect. So, wala siya force and effect on any thing, on anything, okay? Null and void and without any force and effect. So, you highlight that portion. Okay, I'll stop here para maputol ang video.